Hello, I'm Roger Kershaw, and I'm going to briefly take you through the records we hold that cover the subject of civilian internment during the Second World War. To help you research this subject, we also have a research guide on internees available on our website. Most of our records have not been digitised, but I'll indicate when collections have been, and any digitised records I refer to can be accessed for free at Kew. In the main, I'll be talking about our catalogue Discovery, which you can access through our website nationalarchives.gov.uk. Throughout the webinar, I'll be using terms which are outdated today but which were commonly used at the time, such as place names. I've used these here to match our catalogue descriptions and to enhance your search. At the time, the term enemy aliens was used to describe foreign citizens of an enemy nation. As with the First World War, civilians of Axis powers who were residing, working or visiting countries of Allied powers were classed as enemy aliens on the outbreak of war in September 1939 and were immediately considered for detainment in internment camps. The same applied for enemy aliens of Allied powers resident or working in nations of Axis powers. I'll take you through how countries around the world dealt with the policy of internment and what records are available to research, from records relating to individuals to those relating to the administration of the camps they were interned in. I will introduce you to the stories of how enemy aliens formed a key part of the Second World War and what life was like for internees before, during and after their time in captivity. Wherever these individuals were, they had one thing in common. They were the enemy of the powers occupying the country where they were resident. We will start with civilian internment in the United Kingdom. On the outbreak of war on the 3rd of September 1939, over 73,000 Austrian and German nationals resident in the UK were deemed to be enemy aliens. Almost immediately, internment tribunal boards were set up across the country to examine every UK registered enemy alien over the age of 16 and under the age of 70. The object was to divide the aliens into three categories. Category A was that they were to be interned. Category B was that they were exempt from internment but subject to the restrictions decreed by the Special Order. And Category C was that they were to be exempt from both internment and restrictions. Some 120 tribunals were established, assigned to different regions of the United Kingdom. Many were established within London, where large numbers of Germans and Austrians resided. There are 11 set up in northwest London alone. The police were responsible for providing the details of enemy aliens to the tribunals, as they kept registers of aliens, a requirement of the 1914 Aliens Registration Act. The security services and MI5 identified those dangerous individuals who posed a security threat. Many of the tribunals themselves were led by magistrates, and individuals were ordered by local constabularies to attend hearings. After 4 months of hearings, the vast majority, some 66,000, of the enemy aliens were classed as Category C, so free from internment. This number included most of the 55,000 Jewish refugees who had come to the UK to escape Nazi persecution in the early and mid-1930s. Some 6,700 were classified as Category B and were subject to restrictions, and 569 were classified as Category A, so were interned in camps being set up across the UK. The largest settlements of which were on the Isle of Man, though others were set up in and around Glasgow, Liverpool, Manchester, Bury, Sutton Coldfield and London. Racecourses at Kempton Park, Lingfield, Seaton and Paignton were repurposed as internment camps. In May 1940, following the fall of France, and with the risk of German invasion high, regardless of their category classification, a further 8,000 Germans and Austrians resident in the southern strip of England found themselves immediately interned. In addition, resident Italians were also considered for internment following Italy's declaration of war on Britain on the 10th of June 1940. Internment tribunal cards are in the record series HO396 and are all available to search and download on findmypast.co.uk. The front of the cards include full name, date and place of birth, occupation, and the decision of the tribunal. The reverse side sometimes provides a reason for the decision made not to intern. For those who were interned, the reverse of the cards, which may provide details of the actual internment, are closed for 85 years until the year 2032. Requests to access closed reverses can be made to the National Archives in writing, though in many cases the reverses are actually blank. The series of records HO213 and HO215 include correspondence and inspection records of internment camps. A small number of camp nominal rolls can be searched by the name of individual and downloaded again on findmypast.co.uk, but most of the camp records have not been digitised. The series HO214 also contains a very small sample of 88 personal files of individuals who were interned, and these can be searched by name on our catalogue, Discovery. But again, these have not been digitised. Files in the series HO213 and HO215 range from the subjects of policy and administration to camp inspection, discipline and complaints. For example, the document HO213/1053 relates to the inspection of women, children and married couples interned on the Isle of Man. Most internees were released before 1942, following the very controversial policy to ship internees overseas. In June 1940, a decision was taken to deport thousands of internees overseas, resulting from concerns over space to accommodate the growing number of internees, coupled with the suspicion that many of them were enemy agents planning an invasion of Britain. Many were transported to the dominions of Australia and Canada, including 2,500 internees who embarked on a journey to Australia on the 10th of July 1940 on the vessel HMT Dunera. The group comprised a mixture of Jewish refugees, Nazi sympathisers and some 200 Italians. The Jewish refugees and Nazi sympathisers were classified simply as Germans, and this caused resentment and conflict on the journey. The ship had a maximum capacity of 1,500, including the crew, and the resulting conditions have been described as inhumane. The deportees were also subject to ill treatment and theft by the 309 poorly trained British guards on board. The 57-day voyage was also made under the risk of enemy attack. On arrival in Sydney, the first Australian on board was Medical Army Officer Alan Frost. He was appalled, and his subsequent report led to the court-martial of the Army officer in charge, Lieutenant Colonel William Scott. Tragically, on the 2nd of July 1940, another ship deporting internees overseas, the SS Arandora Star, was torpedoed and sunk in the Atlantic en route to Canada. On board were 734 Italians, 438 Germans, including both Nazi sympathisers and Jewish refugees, and 374 British seamen and soldiers. Over half lost their lives, including 470 Italians. It was this event that swayed public sympathy towards the enemy aliens. The release of 1,687 enemy aliens was authorised in August 1940, and by October about 5,000 Germans, Austrians and Italians had been released following the publication of the Undersecretary of the Home Office, Osbert Peake's white paper, Civilian Internees of Enemy Nationality. The paper identified categories of persons who could be eligible for release. By December, 8,000 internees had been released, and of these, over 1,300 men had joined the Auxiliary Military Pioneer Corps. They would be joined by internees in Canada and Australia, but here the process of release would take longer. By 1942, fewer than 5,000 remained interned, mainly on the Isle of Man. Moving on now to civilian internment in Nazi-occupied territory. Here, thousands of British and Allied civilians would similarly be interned in Germany and Austria at the outbreak of war, and this would extend beyond Germany following the invasion of the Low Countries and the fall of France in 1940. And similarly, British citizens in Italy would face internment following their declaration of war on Britain in June of that year. Closer to home, civilians of the occupied Channel Islands were also considered for internment. Most would be interned in what became known as Internierungslager, or ILAGs, and there were several hundred of these camps in France alone. The series of records W0416 include personal cards for hundreds of civilian internees from all walks of life, including students, teachers, businessmen and journalists. They include a significant number of British citizens employed as gardeners by the Imperial War Graves Commission. Details on the cards include full name, date and place of birth, details of parentage and next of kin, religion and occupation, as well as information relating to the camps they were interned in. Many also include a photograph of the internee, displaying their prisoner of war number, and some include hospital cards recording medical attention. These records can be searched by name of internee on Discovery. In addition to these records, there are Red Cross inspection reports of many of the ILAGs reporting on a number of matters including healthcare, accommodation, heating, sport and leisure activities, and food and diet. These records are in the series FO916 and can be searched by name or number of camp. One of the largest camps was ILAG 8, situated in a place called Tost in southern Poland. One of the internees there was British author and playwright P.G. Wodehouse, famous for creating the literary characters Jeeves and Worcester. Many of those interned would spend the entire war in such camps, though some were released early on grounds of poor health and others were exchanged for German and Austrian civilians interned in the UK. Our records tend to only include cards for males interned in German-occupied territories, though there may be reference to internees in the general correspondence of the Foreign Office in FO 371. Printed indexes to these are available online through our Foreign Office Research Guide. Finally, Security Service personnel files in Series KV2 may include records of former internees in which the Security Service took a keen interest. Files are searchable by name and look at suspicious activities of some individuals while interned. I'll now move on to discuss records relating to civilian internment in the Far East. Over 130,000 British and Allied civilians were interned in the Far East during the Second World War. Most were Dutch, but there were thousands of British interned too, mainly families of colonial officers or servicemen. Over 350 internment camps were established, but there was very little access for the Red Cross to inspect, and many camps had very little food or clothing, so conditions were extremely harsh. Women and children were held in separate camps to men, and many were set up in Singapore following the fall of Singapore in February 1942. Overcrowding was a significant problem, and many camps didn't receive the Red Cross supplies they were sent. Discipline was severe, particularly in the camps in Java and Sumatra. The series of records CO 980 contains files of prisoners of war, civilian internees and casualties department. A large part of this collection of papers concerns civilian internees detained when Singapore and Hong Kong were invaded by the Japanese. There are also files on conditions in internee camps and on aliens interned in British colonial territories. The series has not been catalogued by name of internee, but many records are indexed by locality or name of camp, and, as well as administrative records, they do include lists of names of those interned. The series of records CO 1070 consists of 7 boxes of index cards created by the Prisoners of War and Civilian Internee Department during the Second World War to record information relating to civilians and civilian volunteers who were or were thought to be subject to internment or imprisonment in Hong Kong and Malaya. The cards relate principally to British, Dominion and colonial subjects, but there are also cards relating to the nationals of various Allied states, principally the Netherlands, Norway, Russia and Czechoslovakia. There is normally 1 card per individual, but where more information was available, 2 or more cards may be stapled together for 1 person. Sometimes separate cards for members of the family are also stapled together. Occasionally, 1 card serves for 2 or more members of the same family. Cards often include cross-references to cards of other family members. These records have not been digitized or catalogued by name. Only the first and last card in each box has been transcribed by surname. The information recorded on each card varies hugely according to the type of case and the amount of information known at the time. All the cards have the subject's name. They nearly all include a next of kin or other contact address to which information on the subject could be passed, and most include an indication of the occupation, profession, military employment if applicable, and where appropriate, employer of the subject of the card. The other piece of information which appears on most of the cards, but not on all, is about their status, whether interned or held as a prisoner of war, and if so, where and the source and date of this information. The cards often include details as to the nationality and age of the subject, or sometimes the date and place of birth. You can also search for the names of some 13,500 Allied prisoners of war and civilian internees held in Singapore camps in the series WO367. These have been digitized by Find My Past, and you can search by name and download lists. The National Archives has a wealth of material relating to civilian internees across the globe. The richest records tend to be those for individuals resident in Britain who after the war would settle permanently and apply for British citizenship. For these, there may well be case files in the series HO405 pertaining to their life in the UK, including information about their internment. These records can be searched by surname on our catalogue discovery, but have not been digitised, and many of the records are closed for 100 years. You can request a review, but if you do, it's advisable to locate a proof of death of the individual. The UK National Archives is not the only place that holds records of internees. The Manx Heritage Museum on the Isle of Man hold records relating to the administration of camps there, as well as detailed records of individuals. Similarly, county archives in the UK may hold records of internment camps. Records of camps will be available through the appropriate national archives of the country they were located in. For example, the New South Wales State Archives collections may hold records relating to Hay internment camp. Finally, the Red Cross will have information on all known internees of all nationalities, and the Imperial War Museum has in its collection donations of personal material relating to civilian internees in the UK, Europe, and the Far East. Hopefully, I have been able to provide you with some guidance to help you in your research on this topic. We also have lots of research guides available on our website, which provide more information about how to search for the records we have spoken about today. Thank you and good luck with your research.